Well, welcome everyone to this very special call, One Woman's Journey into Becoming a Stepmom, how coaching helped her with the transition. My name is Claudette Chenevert of Coaching Steps, and I'm a certified life coach working to help step families understand and learn positive ways to deal with daily family issues. Today, I'm talking with a stepmom that first came to me a few years ago looking for help with her new family life. Like many women that entered into a blended relationship, Kim found out early that it was going to be more difficult than she imagined. So welcome, Kim, to our call.
Hi, Claudette. Thanks for asking me to be here today.
You're welcome. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what prompted you to seek help for your family.
Okay, my name is Kim, and I'll just state my age, actually. I'm 44. I have to remind myself how old I am. I'm 44, and I've been now with my husband for about 4 years. We got married a little less than 2 years ago. Previous to that, I had been in a long-term relationship but no kids, so I'd never had any experience of children. And when I met my husband, I remember the first conversation I had with him, and he was telling me that he had kids who at the time were a daughter who was 16 and a son who was 10. He was in the process of getting divorced, and when I first met him, I thought, okay, well, I just wrote him off the list. There's no way I'm going to go out with a guy who's in the process of getting divorced and has 2 kids, and there's no way I was going to do it, but I just really liked him a lot. We did get into a relationship and all, and as it was getting more serious, I think, Claudette, when I met you, we were I guess we were engaged, and also living together. We purchased a house together. And it was just really difficult, the transition of living together, A, living with a person you've never lived with before, but B, all of a sudden, for me, who's never had kids, all of a sudden having kids around. And we had his son half-time, and the daughter stayed at home with the mother full-time. So it was just really, really hard.
Not only did you have to adapt to living with a new partner, but you also had to learn to deal with children, which you didn't have in the first place.
Right. And, these are huge transitions. It was the first time I'd actually purchased a house, so that's kind of stressful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then moving in together with somebody else, that's a whole huge transition. And then the kid relationships on top of that, and that was at the very least awkward because we want to make sure that everyone maintains a good relationship with my husband's ex-wife, and that she was very present in their lives, and we made a point of living just a few miles from her so the kids could be close, but awkward to say the least, Oh,
I'm sure. Before your engagement and purchasing the house and everything, did you and your husband discuss the challenges of becoming a step family and what that would mean for both of you?
We definitely discussed it, and, I'll tell you, let's see, I think we were going out for about, that can't be right. Okay, so we went out together for a year before we got engaged, and, I didn't know how to approach the kid thing, so I don't even think I met his daughter until almost a year we'd been going out. She didn't know of my existence. I'd met his son quite a few times. We'd go out for pizza and stuff like that. I asked my friend Kim, and we did talk about, because his daughter was not happy about the divorce, and it was pretty clear that she really I think she wanted him to come back to the family. So, the thought of him all of a sudden bringing someone new into the picture we knew wasn't going to be easy. So we talked about that quite a lot. We talked about, is this really the best thing for you? Because I felt firmly, he did too, that the most important thing was maintaining his relationship with his kids.
Mm-hmm.
So we did talk about that quite a bit. And then when we decided, we're going to go for it and move in together, we talked about, what kind of example do you want to set for your son? Do you want to say, hey, it's okay to live with somebody and not be married to them? So that kind of played into it, too. We talked about it a few times, and I think we did get engaged, and then we got the house, and we're living together. So
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you did have conversations about the fact that his daughter was not prepared to have you in her life, and that for her, she expected or really wanted for her dad and her mom to come back together.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of kids tend to dream about that their parents will come back together one day.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So what did that do for you, feeling that's what she was hoping to happen? How did that make you feel?
Well, it's not easy, and I think this is the hardest thing, and I'm thinking back to when I first met you, Claudette.
Mm-hmm.
The place I was in was feeling just completely alienated. Whenever I was around his kids, including his son, they just pretty much tried to pretend that I didn't exist. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame them at all for that. I think that's just their natural way of coping with the situation. But it's hard being just ignored. And you feel it's not even being unappreciated. It's just like they wish you weren't. You get the sense that they wish you weren't there. That it would be better if you didn't exist. And I didn't have anyone in my life who had gone through this. I know women who have gotten divorced and then whose husbands maybe got remarried, but I didn't know anyone who was the stepmom who came into that situation. So couldn't really talk to anyone about it, and I just kind of thought like, oh, I'm just screwing this whole thing up. I don't know what I'm doing, and I think that's when I met you. I was just feeling like, God, this is the hardest situation I've ever been in, and I'm sure I'm the only person ever who's experienced this.
So that's what you were sensing when you first started living this before, as we were talking to one another. I remember your sense of, I'm going to ruin the entire thing. What am I doing wrong? I remember our initial conversations around your feelings of inadequacy, of not measuring up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And did you anticipate any kind of challenges? And if you did, what kind of challenges did you think you were going to face as being your husband's wife and his children's stepmom?
I'm sure I did anticipate challenges, but I'm sure the challenges that I concocted in my head were not the ones. There were other challenges that happened in real life. I don't think, I was just making up all kinds of scenarios to myself. I'm sure they're typical or common, like his ex-wife is just going to start telling lies about me or something like that, which that never happened. But somehow Mark would start taking sides, and he wouldn't take my side, and that never happened. And he's always been very good about seeing both sides and trying to balance things out. My worst fear was that my stepson would say, I don't like living with her, and if she's living here, then I don't want to see you either, Dad, and I'm not going to come around.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a challenge I anticipated, and that's why I think the first year at least I was just on pins and needles, just trying to make things as nice as possible so that I wouldn't scare him away and be the cause of Mark losing his kids. Yeah.
Instead of being yourself, you started being someone else in order to make everybody happy in the family.
Right, and that just is draining day after day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know you talked about some of the issues you face. Can you tell a little bit more some of the daily interactions that really made it difficult for you to adjust or to get to know the kids more?
Well, first of all, I set myself telling myself, well, don't be yourself, just make everybody happy. I mean, that just kind of set me up for disaster right there. Because then it wasn't fair to the kids either, because I'm not being my authentic self, right?
Yeah.
Some of the other challenges, though, were, things would hurt my feelings, like when either one of the kids would say something, would compare our home to their mom's home. Oh, this isn't like at my mom's house, or this isn't how she would make this dinner,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Things like that would kind of hurt my feelings. Another thing, too, that wasn't just the kids, it was like the community. especially when we first moved in together. The kids are involved in sports and stuff like that, and I wanted to be involved and show support. And so I would go to the occasional, like, soccer game or something like that. And, you know, the moms would inevitably ask, oh, you know, who's your son or on the team? And I'd say, oh, I'm, and, you know, I wasn't at the time married, so I didn't feel like I could say I was a stepmom.
Mm.
So I didn't really know what to say. And I'd just say, oh, I'm Mark's girlfriend. And then I'd be like, and then they'd look at you kind of like, well, what are you doing here, you know? And that made me feel kind of like, wow, I'm really not accepted by not even just the kids, but like society in general, you know.
But that was really hard to at least sort of blend in and be part of your husband's life and try to fit into everything that was part of what he was living in his community, right?
Mm-hmm, right. And I think part of that, and I think this is something that you and I worked early on with, maybe the first session even, was I just didn't know my role.
Yeah.
I didn't know how I fit in and what I should be doing, and it just, I just didn't know how it all should work together.
Yeah, I remember we discussed about what it is that what you envisioned for yourself and how you would like to see yourself. Part of the process as we worked together, I asked you what were your initial goals for yourself and the family, and so can you share a little bit of what you were hoping to create with this new family?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, the setting of goals was something that had not really occurred to me. I was kind of just trying to tread water to keep my head above water, pretty much. You know, just living day to day versus kind of looking ahead to what I wanted to create or see for the family. So that was a new thing for me. And I remember it was like, what? Set goals. I think you and I came up with overall, even though there are many other things we've worked on, we had three main goals. And the first goal, and the most important one for me, was the goal of what I called togetherness. Yeah. And it was creating just the feeling of being comfortable around each other and just being a family, and it was no big deal. Because at this point, anytime we would all get together, it was a big deal. And it was just very, it's like, you know, you have distant relatives or something like that, and you get together for a holiday, and it's this once a year or once every 5 years sort of thing. That's kind of how it felt. And I just wanted to be like just a normal, everyday, hey, we're out here having a barbecue kind of thing, and it's great, you know. His daughter can drop by and just hang out, and she can leave, and no one's reading anything to anybody else or what they're saying or what they're doing. It's just everyone's having a good time and just relaxed, being themselves.
Mm-hmm. And I also remember specifically with this goal that one of the things that you mentioned was that your stepson would never have friends sleep over, but he would have them at his mom. Mm-hmm. And you wanted to have that kind of home environment where the kids were comfortable to have their friends come over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And also, pardon?
No, that was part of the whole thing, too, of the fear of, well, if he feels his friends can't come over, then he's just not going to want to come over anymore at all.
Mm-hmm, exactly. And the other thing that was in the horizon was the holidays. Thanksgiving and Christmas were not far away, and one of the conversations right from the beginning was, how are we going to deal with the holidays? And I remember you were very nervous and stressed about that, too.
Right. Well, yeah. I was very stressed because we did get engaged first, then we moved in together, and then we got married later in that same year. And when his daughter found out, she was really not happy about it and was pretty much said, well, it's never going to work out anyway. So, and she said that she would never want to come over to our house. She's never going to set foot in our house. So that was why this goal of togetherness and me picturing us being together in the backyard for a barbecue was a big, big deal. You know, that's a big goal when someone's saying, I'm never setting foot in your house. I'm like, I see you there and having a good time. And I remember you saying, hey, I was describing the goal, and you're like, oh, okay, well, just so you know, that's not going to happen really soon. And I'm like, oh, no, I understand. I thought it would be like a 3 or a 5-year goal.
Yeah, I remember. So how long did it actually take for your stepdaughter to actually go and visit you at the home and have a meal there? Do you remember?
Yes, because, we set the goal, and I'm like, okay, 3 to 5 years, minimum. And this is why I brought it up, actually, because you asked about the holidays. And I think she had probably made the comment about, never setting foot in your house. I think that was September. And then the first time she actually came over and had dinner was Thanksgiving. Mm-hmm. And that was just 2 months later. And I was shocked. Like, we set the goal, and I was shocked that she did super, super hard. I mean, nothing was easy about that meal. It was the day after Thanksgiving, actually. But the fact that it even occurred was just so monumental,
Mm-hmm. And I remember our conversation around just the fact that she actually came was a big event. And to slowly work through the event and not expect it to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And we actually talked about strategies in helping you deal with the anxiety of whenever your stepdaughter came, how to help yourself through that phase and the preparation.
Right. And I think one of the things that helped me the most was my brain just kept going to this kind of worry and stress of like, well, what if this happens, and what if that happens, and all these worst-case scenarios. And that was what was kind of getting me all worked up and tense. And you said, okay, sure, we can talk about those and kind of, what to do. But, why don't we focus more on the good things that can happen? Instead of focusing on the negative, let's focus on what possibly good might come out of this. And so that really helped, because I do believe that, what you're thinking about, you attract. And it's just by the fact that if I go in there all worried and tense and expecting bad things to happen, then I'm not going to be very comfortable, and I'm going to make other people uncomfortable. If I'm more relaxed and, just kind of going with the flow, then that invites other people to do the same. So that was pretty huge for me. I didn't realize I was being so negative, really, at the time, until you kind of very nicely pointed it out to me.
A lot of our exercises that we've done together was actually helping you to see some of the positive changes that were going through in your family and in the goals that you had set for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. A lot of them, we actually, I believe, did several visualization exercises where, to make your goals even more powerful, we actually had you talk about your setting where you actually saw yourself, and we rehearsed some of the events that you were attending, and even practiced some of the things that you could do while at those events, and how you would feel, even how you were dressed and things of this sort. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That was really, really helpful.
Good. So, again, some of the visions of your family really became reality as you worked in making them more of something that was important to you, rather than focusing on what was going wrong all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I was amazed at how quickly things would happen. And I was saying that, like, I feel like at some point I was saying that every week. I was like, oh, my God, like, this thing happened, and I didn't think that would happen for another, year or something like that.
True. Yeah, exactly. Do you feel that some of your way of taking care of yourself, of focusing on making sure that you felt supported, was helpful in making these goals move forward faster?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the self-care was one of the strategies you and I came up with to help me to cope with the stressful situations. And I know in particular because we were taking a lot of little family trips, like long weekend trips together, and and there was just sometimes just a lot of tension. There was still a lot of tension between Mark and his daughter, and because she was still kind of upset at him, she would criticize him a lot, and that would kind of set me off, right? So you and I realized, okay, well, in order for me to be there for everybody else and just be at my best, I needed to take care of myself first, which was kind of counterintuitive to me. Usually I take care of myself last. So we came up with actual things, like here are the things that I need to do to take care of myself, including, you know, going for a run because that helps me feel better. And anytime I needed to feel like we'd go camping and stuff like that, and if I felt I was getting too tense, then I'd just go for a run and come back feeling a lot better. So that helped a lot. And just other little things, you know, being at home and making sure I was getting a little downtime and feeling okay with excusing myself if I just didn't feel well and saying, you know, I just have to take a little time for myself. That was great, too.
Yeah, and I think also that your husband really appreciated the fact that you were taking care of yourself because it sort of gave him freedom of not having to take care of everybody at the same time either. So he wasn't having to feel as if he had to be in the middle between you and his kids and having to navigate between both of you. He felt probably in a way that you were able to take care of yourself. He didn't feel the same stress and probably felt a lot more supported at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good point. It didn't really occur to me, but absolutely. He was always very on board with, well, it's funny because as far as coaching is concerned, he's just, I don't know that he would ever see a coach himself. I don't think that he really disrespects the industry or anything like that, but I think he just feels like, well, that's not for me. And when I told him that I was going to start working with you, he was kind of like, well, why? And, you know, from his side, he couldn't understand what I was going through either because, you know, he's never been there. So he was supportive, but just kind of like curious about, well, I don't know what you think you're going to get out of that. And then once I started really, you know, things started to happen, every time he knew I was talking to you on a weekly basis, he'd say, oh, okay, well, you know, what did you and Claudette talk about today? And I would tell him all these really good points you and I had talked about and some deep questions or important questions he and I needed to discuss. And he was really open and on board with it and very supportive. And yeah, the self-care thing, I totally agree. I think he's like, yeah. I think I was worried that he would think it would be selfish of me to take care of myself. He's like, you know, hey, do what you need to do so that you're not all cranky and tense or something when the kids are around.
Yeah, everybody benefited in the fact that because you were feeling good about yourself, Mark actually felt good about having his kids around, and his kids probably felt, well, you know what, everybody's good and there's no tension. It's really important to realize how everybody's energy affects each other, and the fact that you were able and willing to take care of yourself made an impact on the entire family, even though I didn't work with anybody else other than you.
Right. That's true.
So, Kim, tell me, what were some of the obstacles that kept you from creating the relationship you wanted with your stepkids?
Ooh, obstacles. I think in the very beginning, before you and I started working together, an obstacle definitely was just myself. I mean, I just not knowing my place and my role in the family just made me feel really kind of adrift, and it wasn't a good feeling. So I know that was an obstacle for sure. I think, most of it was just in my head and just being very hesitant to make a move at all. I kind of think I talked about being on pins and needles with my stepson, and part of what you and I did was set little goals, like, well, okay, you know, if you want to feel more comfortable around him, what would that look like, and what would you be doing? And just by saying, well, it would look like this, and then it would just happen, and maybe because it was already in my mind that this is what we should be doing, it just would happen naturally. It wasn't like I was contriving to make it happen. the kind of relationship. Other than that, I mean, the kids really have been themselves, which I am very grateful for, which doesn't mean everything's all great and hunky-dory or that, things go from bad to wonderful in a linear sense. I mean, there's definitely been some ups and downs.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And I think the only time we've had a big obstacle was if I couldn't or didn't take the time to really talk to Mark and to also listen to him about his perspective on a situation.
Mm.
That's when if neither one of us is listening to the other, because there are a couple times where I'm like, I feel like you're just not hearing what I'm saying. You don't understand what I'm saying. That's kind of when, when you're not listening to each other, that's when things just stop. Fortunately, that's only ever happened once.
So part of the process is having communication in a way that each one of you understands and support each other and can really be there for one another.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even part of supporting isn't necessarily always agreeing with the other person, but it's feeling like you're heard and understood, and then you could say, okay, you understand me, and you don't agree with me, and that's okay.
Yeah, true, exactly. The fact that you're at least able to disagree with each other created a sense where you were able to actually feel good with one another.
Mm-hmm.
A few things that you mentioned, that when we worked together, we created some small steps for you to get closer with your stepchildren. Did you ever find that the steps that were suggested and that you took were monumental or impossible to do?
I think maybe some were kind of daunting. I think I'm suppressing some certain memories. I think there's maybe one or two steps that we set for me that I maybe either didn't do or, kind of chickened out or something. And now I just don't remember what they were. But I think the steps, the ones that I can remember, like they didn't always – I remember one in particular, we were having this conversation about having a little strategy of going on a trip and saying, okay, this is going to be the first time the four of us are going on a trip, just the four of us. Mm-hmm. Well, what are we going to do? And so you and I came up with like activities or ways to get the kids involved and conversation starters, things we could talk about and stuff like that. And some of that worked really well and some kind of just fell flat, but that's okay. We had other plans, And
I remember some of the things we had talked about is trying to find what each child is interested in and have a conversation around what really interests them. And, of course, not everything works perfectly, but the fact that the kids saw you actually trying to get to know them probably got them to want to know who you were as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, there was a time when I remember your husband Mark went out for dinner with the kids, and you had not gone. And I remember you mentioned that the kids had asked where you were, and you were surprised that they even remembered what your name was.
Right, I do remember that. Mm-hmm.
And so these little things actually built on each other and made that relationship grow little by little. And actually, I think that's when you started to realize, well, gosh, the kids do know who I am. They're realizing that I'm here, and they're even asking about me, what's happening, and so showing some care and concern for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I do remember that. That's funny.
What is the key thing that really helped you to move forward in creating the kind of relationship you wanted?
The key thing, I think it wouldn't have happened at all if I hadn't gotten just support, because as I said earlier, I just felt really alone, like no one else has ever gone through this and no one understands what I'm going through. Mm-hmm. And just, having conversations with you, and then you would tell me about, share your experiences, made me feel like not alone, made me feel like a normal, sane person. And then that gave me hope, like, okay, because before I think I felt kind of hopeless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I just really couldn't do anything. I just kind of was very passive. So just having that acknowledgement made the difference, maybe opened the door to say, okay, well, I can do this. And I really think that's really the whole catalyst. And then from there, having all the structure and setting the goals and then figuring out, like, well, if this is the goal, how are we going to get there? Mm-hmm. That was great, but I wouldn't even have been open to that conversation if I didn't feel like, this was something that, I don't know, being a step-parent isn't just, I don't know, it's almost like I can't put words to it. I think at the time I was thinking that it was like the worst thing ever. and I wished it just hadn't happened. And there was no way I was going to get through it. And
Kim, mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of women actually feel this way. It's like the most difficult thing you could ever imagine. And most women say that unless you've been through it, you can't understand or you can't comprehend how painful, how difficult it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we talked about your mom, and you said you couldn't even talk about this with your mom because your mom had no understanding of what actually you were going through.
Right. And it wasn't like I didn't have anyone to talk to because I didn't want to be that woman who's complaining about her stepkids, Mm. And it wasn't really about them so much. It's just the situation. I didn't want, my family kind of looking down on them, or because when you're just talking to people about someone and all you do is complain about them, then they're not going to have a very good impression of that person.
Exactly.
And I definitely didn't want that. And but there's so many dynamics involved, especially with their mom being close by and that being around. And it's almost like I don't want to sacrifice anything. Their loyalties to her, and then, their loyalties to the family, and, it was just a lot to take in.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many different pieces, and because you are not the only person involved in their lives, there's actually their mother, which is a very important part. And I know we did talk a little bit about your husband's ex-wife, a little bit how to deal with her. And you actually did have some interaction where it wasn't all bad. It was actually some of it were good, where she actually said thank you for having given her daughter a gift over the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
And so that helped you to realize, wow, she's not a mean person, or as the kind of person you thought, or sometimes a lot of people portray ex-wives to be.
Right.
And so just the fact of having support, of having someone help you go through some of the setting the goals and the structure, that was something that really helped you to move forward and give you hope, feel normal, or more normal in what you were going through.
That's right, more normal.
More normal, exactly. So what do you think would have happened if you would not have gotten help? Do you think your relationship with your husband would have been where it's at now, or the relationship with your stepkids would be where it is now if you hadn't decided to get help?
I definitely don't think we would be to the place we are now. I think we've made so much more progress, and I can even report that my stepdaughter was here at our home the other night and hung out for dinner and hung out for a long time after the meal was over, versus before she might come over and then meal is done, she's out of there, It's just like, what's the maximum, the minimum amount of time I can spend, and then I gotta go. She was hanging out, and we're having great conversation, and, it was a lot of fun. I definitely don't think we'd be in that place now. I also think because of the work you and I did together that honestly my husband's relationship with both of his kids is so much better than it would have been had you and I not had these conversations and that I could then have conversations with him. Yeah, I kind of feel like we'd still be maybe where I was when we first moved in together. We're just kind of still the pins and needles, and maybe I would have started to resent things a little bit, the situation. I can see that happening if I was always just being the one giving and they were allowed to just not acknowledge my existence, whatever. I'm sure that was really kind of wearing on me already. Yeah, I think it would have been very damaging. We've got 2 family vacations planned this summer, and we probably wouldn't be doing that right now if we hadn't gotten help.
Yeah, and I remember when we first talked, a lot of the concerns you had was actually around vacations, and you had actually said, well, I'll let them go, and I just won't be with them. Mm-hmm. And then we had a conversation about how that wasn't going to be an effective strategy in making your family work together. And I'm glad that you're actually having a lot of time together, and I'm really happy to hear that your stepdaughter is going over and having dinner and actually hanging out, because I remember the first time when we talked, associating your stepdaughter and fun were not 2 things that went together.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think what we were just saying just before that was the whole thing about the vacation, and I kind of forgot. I remember now thinking and saying out loud, and I said it to my husband, because we'd gone on a trip and it just hadn't gone so well, and I just said, you know what, I'm not going to do them anymore. You guys go. I want you to have a great relationship with them. It seems like I'm hampering that relationship because they don't want me there. I was just feeling sorry for myself. You go on the trips without me, and I'll just, you can have a relationship with me, and then you can have this separate relationship with the kids, but it won't be with all of us at the same time. And I thought, logically, I'm like, well, that just makes perfect sense, I thought that was just a fine compromise, but, yeah, that really wasn't going to go. That was not going to be a long-lasting thing. I can see how it was tearing him apart, and it was setting a bad example for the kids, just saying, oh, well, we don't have to acknowledge Kim because she's going to make it easy on us and not be around anytime we're around, which tells them maybe I don't want them around, so.
Yeah, the message was the fear of that message of not being important, or we don't care about you, or I'm just not going to involve myself, was not something that would have worked long term. And eventually your husband would have probably felt like he had to choose sides between you and his kids and deciding, okay, where do I spend my time? And that would have been very difficult for your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, Kim, tell me, what advice would you give to anyone who's in a step relationship, who's going through some of the things that you went through? What words of advice would you give them?
Okay. Well, yeah, 2 years ago, I probably would have said, just don't do it. Don't get into a step-parent relationship. Don't get in that situation. I remember at one point just thinking that to myself, saying, God, I would not wish this on anybody. But now I would say just get support. Find some way to get support. I think the first way I initially got support was just going online, and I found a place where other stepmoms were congregating. Yeah. And kind of venting or whatever. So I felt all of a sudden like, oh, there's this whole community of women who are just kind of like me. The problem with that for me that, first that was great, but the problem for me that it wasn't going to work long term as far as support goes is there's a lot of negativity there on those online sites, and it was just like it wasn't making me feel better. It was making me feel like, ugh, you know, a lot of women complaining about the ex-wives and the kids, and I had to just get away from that. So, but whatever support works for you, if you're in this situation, even if it's just a girlfriend who understands or is a good listener, but having somebody, for me, setting goals with you was just great because it gave me, that's what I like. I like structure. I'm a planner, and I like to be able to feel like, well, okay, I can come up with this plan. It was like the thing I could control in a very uncontrollable situation, and it just helped me feel like, okay, I'm not just at the whim of whatever, of my husband and the kids and, you know, who knows what else, the community who's shunning me for being a girlfriend or whatever. Here are the steps I can take. And then that made me feel very empowered.
Yeah. I remember that your sense of feeling as if you have no control over whatever's going on. And as we talked and created these goals and these steps, I actually heard it in your voice, the confidence that you gain in this relationship, the sense of empowerment, as you said, in knowing that you could actually do something to help this relationship and to help yourself feel good about being where you were. And I think that's probably one of the greatest gifts you could ever receive for yourself or give yourself is those sense of feeling that you do have control over your life, your thoughts, to some extent your environment, and feeling that you're not a victim, but that you are capable of achieving what you want.
Right. That's the key thing that you just said there, is not being the victim, you know. And when you're playing the victim, there's nothing you can do about it, you know. It's almost like it's a weird thing to say, but it's almost like you enjoy being in that spot, but it's not going to move you forward at all, you know, because that's when you start blaming people. It's so-and-so's fault, or, you know, I think it breeds nothing but bad feelings overall, and I think it just will keep building up until who knows what, but...
Exactly. And it's actually very negative for the kids, too, because they see this and somehow they will associate it with it's their fault somewhere, say, okay, well, I must have done something wrong. And so it really is a very bad role model or a bad influence for the kids, and they'll grow up feeling worthless and unappreciated as they grow up to become adults in their turn. Mm-hmm. Any last words, Kim, before we finish this call? Anything else you'd like to share or say about being a stepmom and your journey through all of this?
Well, I guess the only thing left to say is, you know, and thank you again for this forum. It's been a very interesting discussion. It's actually been great for me to have you remind me, like, oh, remember when you were at this place? And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. I would just say, you know, thank God that I had you in my life, because it was just a weird, because I have lots of other things going on in my life, different relationships that I felt like, you know, all this stuff is going well. I know what's going on. You know, my job, where I was working was great. But this one place, I just really didn't know what to do with it. And I don't even know. I feel like very firmly that we would not have this relationship probably would not have succeeded had we not gotten help, or had I not gotten help for you. And, you know, by association, then my husband got help. Yeah, I think just... It's great. I'm now not regretting being a stepmom, and I'm confident when I go out into the soccer field and say, "Hey, I'm the stepmom of, you know, this boy over here," and everyone's fine with that. And I think it's really how I put myself out there with confidence that then people start to respond much differently, including the kids and including my husband's. I think that's just a key, just be confident and be who you are. Don't try to be all things to all people.
Very true. Very true. Good points to reflect on. So thank you, Kim, for sharing your story, and I'm sure that this will help other women that might find themselves in this situation to feel a little less lonely and more normal within their step-family relationship. Understand that you're not alone. Other people are there, are going through, and as Kim mentioned, having support and finding support helps you, not only you, but actually the entire family, in making this relationship function in a way that, again, it's not a perfect relationship, but it's a more normal kind of relationship where you can actually have enjoyment in being together. And so if you would like to know more about my services, and you can visit me at my website at www.coachingsteps.com, or you can call me at 703-915-2470. And this is Claudette Chenevert thanking you for your time.